When you think Taiwan, you think tech. But when you live in Taiwan, you get an altogether different picture, especially when it comes to public services. Now, many government processes still require in-person visits, physical ID cards, and even personal seals for verification. Now, for years, Taiwan has been on the cusp of a digital transformation, but progress has been slow. So, to understand how Taiwan can go fully digital, we are speaking to Toomas Hendrik Ilves. He's the former president of Estonia, the pioneers of digital society, which has recently achieved 100% digitization of its government services. I'm Divya Gopalan, and this is Connected on Taiwan Plus. Toomas Hendrik Ilves was Estonia's president from 2006 to 2016 and was instrumental in the nation's digital transformation. Thank you so much for joining us from Tallinn.
Glad to be here. I love Taiwan and Taipei.
Thank you. Now, Estonia says it's achieved 100% digitization of its government services, including one of the last items on the list, which was filing for divorce, I believe. To some, it would be like breaking up over text messages, making something that is quite personal and complex, almost incredibly impersonal and digital. Do you think every government service needs to be digitized?
Well, we think it's a good idea simply because if you're going to run a 21st century country, you should be able to do everything on digital. I mean, it's not simply as via text message. I mean, you have to actually be simultaneously online before a video camera. But it means that people who are living in different places can complete their divorce online with the agreement of both once they have identified themselves securely. And our whole system really boils down to a secure identity system where everyone has a unique identity online, which is really one of the first hurdles of anything digital, is to make sure you are you and to be able to prove you are you, and that whoever you're dealing with, in this case, say the government, you know that it is the government and not someone else spoofing the government.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk a lot more about that, the whole idea of having your digital identity. But before that, you served as Estonia's president, as we mentioned, from 2006 to 2016, and you really did champion digital governance, made it a huge part of your national strategy. Why was that so important for you?
Well, first of all, I just point out that I probably became, one of the main reasons I think I was elected president was actually I had done this earlier. So when I was president, almost everything major had been done, or at least the backbone. My role was actually started in the early 90s when I tried to convince the government that we needed to digitize the country, as where digitization was really the only place where a country that had just recently crawled out from under communist rule and occupation for 50 years, where we were not horribly behind everyone else. But I started pushing this in 93, which was basically, or at least the idea came, because it was in 1993 that the first web browser came out. And then because I've been geeky all my life, a friend of mine sent me this suggestion to go buy this thing, which I didn't quite know what it was, but anyway, it was Mosaic. The first web browser, you had to buy it, unlike now, and you had to upload it off 7 floppies. And when I opened it up, I said, wow, this is the one thing where we actually, even though we're far behind in everything else, we're a poor country, at the time we were very poor, we were on a level playing field with the richest and the most advanced. And so I started pushing this, and then my second step was to figure out that actually the way to do it is to get kids working on this. So to put, I mean, the idea was to put computers in every school and to put all the schools online. And we were fortunate to have a minister of education who was a PhD in astrophysics, who kind of got what I was pushing. Other ministers have not necessarily had a strong science background, and often, in fact, don't. But he agreed with this, and he pushed it through the government at the time, and that's how it took off. And then the second element was that the banks realized that this was would be a great way to save money, and so they began pitched into a program to get older people and people in rural areas online, and that was all done by the late 90s. Now, what happened in the interim was we realized that really there are, to really make the government work, you have to solve a series of, not many, but a number of security-related issues. The most important one is having a unique identity. Mm-hmm. And for that, you need a population registry where every person in your country, citizen, non-citizen, permanent resident, well, resident of under 90 days, over 90 days, needs to have a unique identity. And so we have had a population registry where everyone has a unique numerical identifier, which is part of the problem. The other issue is security, which is that you need to know that you are you and to be verified. And so we issued everyone at that time chip cards. And this you had to, using two-factor authentication, which is use your card and some other device to prove who you are. It's called two-factor authentication. It's kind of the basic standard these days on all credit card transactions. Mm-hmm. Back then, I mean, no one was using this. I was the only country in the world that was using a chip card to identify yourself. And then it had to be end-to-end encrypted, which was another big step, using encryption that had been just, well, again, a very sophisticated encryption system. So that took care of the unique identity part and the security that was absolutely necessary. The other issue, which had a technical but also a rather difficult legal or long-term legal solution, was the architecture of this system. What goes where? And what was uniquely Estonian was the something we now call the X-Road, but it's a distributed data exchange system, which sounds like a mouthful, but to understand what that is that we don't have data all in one place, nor do we even have, sort of sections here, sections there. What we have is every kind of data that relates to you is unique somewhere. I mean, think of this room as full of these little Christmas tree balls. And one ball would be my healthcare data. Another one would be my driving license data, and another one would be my tax data, and then someone else's healthcare records here, someone else's driver's licenses over there, and so they're all individually stored, or at least accessible. So only I can access my medical records, mm-hmm. and my doctor is the only one he's the other one who can access it. The police can't access my medical records. My doctor can't look at my tax records. So if you put the system together, it becomes very secure. because if something happens, the worst that will happen would be a single cell that's gone. I mean, so a cell that would include, say, my healthcare record, not the healthcare records of anyone else. Now, the counterexample to this and the disaster that we were trying to avoid actually befell the United States government in 2015 with what is called now the OPM, or the Office of Personnel Management hack, in which the United States stored all records of all federal employees. I think in total it's up to some 23 million records of people in one place. And this included things such as the home address of FBI agents, psychological profiles.
Yeah, I do remember that. Just some very sensitive information.
Right, and it was for everybody, all people who had ever worked for the U.S. government. Well, you couldn't do that with us. There's no way you could get that because it's all over the place.
Yeah, you've touched on so many points that I do want to break down as we continue our conversation. But before we do that, I just want to take a look at the rankings of which countries have gone through the digital transformation. And these are laid out by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. The E-Government Development Index, or EGDI, is based on three components: the Online Service Index, the Human Capital Index, and the Telecommunication Infrastructure Index. Now, in the 2024 rankings, Denmark claimed the top spot, followed by Estonia in second place. Two Asian nations, Singapore and South Korea, ranked third and fourth respectively, with Iceland rounding out the top five. Now, you know, Estonia is definitely one of the pioneers in digitizing the nation. I want to ask whether, but there are questions whether Estonia was able to do it, and if you look at the countries that we've listed out, which are relatively either in the millions or tens of millions, but with a country in the hundreds of millions, and you mentioned you grew up in the United States, and you also mentioned what happened in the US in 2015. Would a country with a much larger country be able to follow the Estonian model?
Yes, it's. I mean, basically, you need a lot. You need bigger servers.
Simple as that.
More server space. I mean, some large countries, and you say Canada, the United States, Mexico, Brazil, and Germany have a federal system. That just means a little more programming, because a federal system, certain things are done at one level of governance, other things are done at a different level of governance. That is not an issue. And actually, when we look at, when I was talking about the X-Road, or the distributed data exchange layer, to create that is all based on who gets to see what data, which data. Mm-hmm. It is not, I mean, it requires a little more work. There is nothing inherent to size that limits this, except for server size, and that's not a problem these days. So no, it's not a problem. And also I should point out that Iceland, which is named there as number 5 in the world, actually uses the X-Road that we developed, which we also give away for free.
There's a call out to Taiwan.
Well, it's an open source system, which when we developed it, and then we sort of, especially when it came out, we're still not very well off. Now we're doing rather well, but we were not well off. And so what we wanted to offer at least financial aid, or rather foreign aid, foreign assistance. And so about 25 countries, rich and poor, have used our architecture, which you can get for free. It's all open source.
Okay, I want to explore Taiwan's ecosystem with you here. Taiwan does have a digital ministry, but much of the focus is now combating fraud and cybersecurity. Now, Taiwan organizations are the target of more than 4,000 cyber attacks a week, making it the economy, or the most of any economy in the Asia-Pacific region. So bearing that in mind, is Taiwan still a contender for full digitization?
Well, I don't know how secure your system is. I mean, we are under constant attack here and have been victim of some really massive cyber attacks, but no one's really managed to shut down or penetrate our government system.
In that vein, state-sponsored threats, as you know, are on the rise. For Estonia, Russia has been a huge concern. For Taiwan, it's China. Does it make a difference knowing where those attacks are likely to come from? But you've also said we need to think beyond geography. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, first of all, because of where computer technologies say you can ultimately figure out where it comes from, but since you can mirror attack, so basically you can do sort of false flag attacks. I mean, you can then do the forensics and figure out actually it came from over there. But you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure it out. I mean, who's trying to attack you? I mean, it's kind of generally tends to be rather obvious who it is that wants to get inside you because of either what you have or what the general political environment is like. So when it was the geography part, it's just a matter of, I mean, more in terms of size, right? I mean, basically, you can replicate what we do anywhere and with any size. You have to scaling up to larger countries. It's not. I mean, as I said, it requires resources. That's about it.
I want to go back to what is being done here in Taiwan and get your thoughts on this. The Ministry of Digital Affairs is also currently piloting the Taiwan Digital Identity Wallet. It's planned to roll out to the public by December 2025. Now, according to the ministry, the program will allow individuals to securely store their digital credentials, such as citizen digital services, national health insurance cards, and driver's license. And that means that people will only need their mobile phones to verify their credentials. This may seem like a baby step in relation to what Estonia has done, but given Estonia's journey, what challenges do you think that the government could face or anticipate, or what should they be looking out for when rolling out something like this?
Well, one of the things, I think the issues have less to do with the technology, but with the privacy and access issues, because you need a strong. Our system basically was difficult or took a long time to do was to figure out who can see what. And that is also culturally determined. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, in my country, all property records are public. So anyone can see what I own. When I mentioned this when I was advising the Greek government, they were shocked that property records are public. Whereas to our north, Finland and Sweden, they not only have public property records, but they also they publish everyone's tax returns online. I mean, you have to bring in your own culture and what is acceptable to your own culture, then to determine legally who can see what. I mean, in our system, which obviously I know best, I mean, in order for the police to look at anything, they need a court order, and those are actually issued fairly rarely. They're still restricted to what they can access currently, which is basically anything that's related to like driving and crimes and so forth. Working out who can see what is what it takes time. People are still concerned about privacy, so we've incorporated into this system what I call reciprocal transparency or reciprocal mutual transparency. So if someone wants to look at my property records, they're free to do so. But I also see who it is that has been looking at my property records. We try to be as transparent as possible while maintaining as much privacy as possible. And that's worked. But I would say if you're going to do the system you have there, just to get people to buy into the system, you have to be people have to feel confident that no one is looking at their data. Now, our system is different. So you're doing the wallet system where you have different cards, as it were, on your phone. We don't have a wallet. We basically we can access anything simply with our ID, and that's how it works. We have one card. I mean, if you use the card at all, I mean, people do use an ID card. But basically, for all digital interactions now, we have a strictly sort of device-based system that you don't, because you basically register your ID card, and then after that, you just use whatever device you happen to have.
There have been a number of attempts, or I would say pre-attempts, to get people on board of the idea of having that digital ID. In fact, to get a sense of how the public feels about digitizing their identity information, we went to the streets of Taipei to hear directly from them, and this is what they said.
我是现金流的，我还是比较喜欢拿皮夹。
我觉得听起来是好吧，因为方便性吧。我觉得大家可能会懒，假设治安没有问题的话，那应该可以省非常非常多时间。
不知道会不会被盗账号吧？个资吗？
我觉得对我来讲会蛮便利的，因为其实我不太会带身份证出门，对，因为我很怕用不见。
像很多新闻啊，很多什么都会说，治安又被外泄，然后台湾治安好像很廉价，什么在暗网100块就可以买到所有人的治安，然后我们的手机无时无刻都会接到不知道哪里泄露的一些业务的电话嘛，所以这个蛮令人担心的。
方便性吧，就是不用带着一个皮夹这样到处走，就是一个手机就可以解决一切事情了。
Now, convenience was a recurring theme for many of them, but in general, there's a lot of public resistance to getting that digital ID card. Can you tell us a little bit about Estonia's experience and whether you faced any kind of pushback and how that was overcome?
Well, I mean, not so much pushback, just the question was, would people use it? And what really turned people onto our system was putting doing your taxes online. Because everyone hates doing their taxes. It's a tedious process. But what we did is since all of the tax data are reported digitally, so my employer would then report that they paid this much to me, and so the tax board knows how much to tax me, and all of these different things such as deductions for children. They now have this many children, dependents. I make a contribution to the Boy Scouts or my church or something. I mean, all of those things, you do it online and it's all registered. So since everything that is paid to me or that I have paid out or what I deserve to get, such as a pension, all of that just feeds into this system. And so when I log on to pay my taxes, what I end up is getting a list of all the income I've had, all of the various deductions I have, and it's just standing there. And then at the bottom it says you owe or you will get back this much money. And then then it says, do you accept? If I press accept, well, I'm done with my taxes. If do not accept the tabulations and the calculations, then I can go on and work on it. But They're basically always correct.
Well, Taiwan's tax system, I have to say, is very well digitized and very, very efficient, but there still are points of resistance in completely digitizing processes here. And part of the issue is the aging society, and there's a little, perhaps a fear of the technology or not being able to manage the technology. Is there a concern that, digitizing everything and putting everything down where it's not tangible pieces of paper would exclude some parts of society?
Maybe 25 years ago that was a concern, but it seems that older people, I'm an older person, I've gotten used to it. I'm 71 years old. But I've been using computers since I was 17, so maybe I'm a little odd case here.
You are an outlier.
But no, everyone uses the system here. We basically 99% of taxes, 99% of prescriptions. We have digital prescriptions here lots of countries now do, but we were the first to have digital prescriptions. And then after the Finns, who live across the Gulf of Finland from here, adopted digital prescriptions, I went to the Finnish president and I said, look, you have digital prescriptions, we have digital prescriptions, we get 7 million Finnish visits a year, and there only are 5 million Finns, so that means that they're coming more than once. Why don't we make our prescriptions mutually acceptable? Which is an easy thing to do. You go with your ID. If you're a Finn, you go to an ID, you get sick, you need your medicine. Maybe you call your doctor in Finland and say, I need this medicine. And then you can get it from Estonia. And those are the kinds of things that work with your ID. Now, what's happened since then, which made it even more popular, is that I guess 12 countries in the European Union now have this reciprocal arrangement. So if I go to Portugal and I get sick, I just go there and say, ID myself, and I get the medicine that my Estonian doctor has prescribed to me. These are the kinds of things that make people really like digital services. And if anything, what we have found is that Estonians, especially young Estonians who, they say, I want to leave Estonia and go somewhere else. That a big kind of a driving force for people to come back is that, I don't want to deal with that paper world.
I want to change tack a little bit and pick up on something you've highlighted, which was included in a speech to the UN General Assembly. And using your words, you've said that while digital technology can be a liberating force, it can also be a means to control citizens. And I think that is one of the concerns here, especially in Taiwan, which prides itself as a democracy and has kind of lived through an authoritarian regime or authoritarian governments also. So how can democratic nations ensure, or are there safeguards put in place in Estonia to ensure that e-governance empowers the citizens and will not later be used as a tool to control citizens?
Well, this is always the big fear, and especially, if you're Taiwanese, you know that the social credit system, digital system used in the PRC is extremely intrusive and abusive. Well, as I said, we built our safeguard. We came out of a very totalitarian society here with, I would say, an equivalent, certainly even more greater aversion to government authorities, since we had the KGB here. Whatever issues Taiwan had, it wasn't really nothing compared to what Estonians had to live through. So the real So that's why privacy and those safeguards are extremely important, and why it is. I mean, we have a rule of law country, and people really believe in that we are a rule of law country. So we know that we trust the government. Now, on top of that, just in case you don't trust the government, I mean, we have all log files are maintained, so that if someone has gotten your information, you can find out who it was. I mean, that is really the element of like keeping records of these things, so that you know someone's been snooping around. I mean, the thing is that it's so hard to do it, and the government doesn't really. I mean, I don't know, maybe because we're so small that we don't have the people who might come up with this idea, but we do not and cannot. Government cannot go into other people's data, which is all encrypted in a way that it is I mean, you know how it's encrypted, and it is encrypted. Only you have the access to the keys for encryption, so they really don't. So I mean, but as I said, you have to trust. There has to be a very strong element of trust, which we have here. And since the record of not having things hacked, while other systems are constantly being hacked, we have not been hacked because of the robustness of the system. And in fact, the private sector here in this country, banks and all kinds of other systems use the government-run system because it's far more secure than any commercial security company can offer.
I think that element of trust is still something that people here are contending with. And just to give an example of that, Estonia has had years of experience with online voting or iVoting. Taiwan is just beginning its journey towards that digital transformation. And so we wanted to gauge public sentiment on digital ballots and went to the central part of Taipei, Xinyi District, near Taipei 101, to find out what people think.
北欧国家 Estonia， 他们都可以已经数位网络都已经可以投票了，
还是实体吧，因为这种做票的风险还是蛮大的。
我觉得数位的一定是最方便的，然后大家投票意愿一定会比较高，因为你纸本的你要特地走去投票所去投，但是政府得给出一个保证，就是这个电子投票不会有作弊的嫌疑。
现在台湾的高科技已经毋庸置疑了，台湾的 ICT 半导体，可是台湾的到现在所有的选举的制度都还是非常的落后。他已经70、80岁，你还要叫他排队。
虽然说会担心治安，但如果全台湾都这样用，那就这样吧。然后治安的议题应该会担心，可是应该政府要认真的去处理，但不是因为我要处理，所以我不推这个东西，那我们就会落后别人超级多。
还是实体耶？现在有什么国家是数位投票的吗？
That last question, are there countries using digital voting now? In Estonia's most recent elections, 51.1% of the votes were cast online. The first-time digital voting in that case surpassed half of the total votes. Now, despite this, the Conservative People's Party leader, Martin Helm, questioned its validity. How did Estonia address these concerns?
Well, first of all, that's a far-right, extreme right party that were they to ever get a lot of votes, they would think voting is great. I mean, it's just a populist line. So I don't take that seriously. The rest of the political spectrum all accepts it. I mean, it's sort of the normal Democratic Party line, but these are people who are really out there. But that's not the issue. The thing is, what you have to think about is, how does paper voting work? The only element there that is not digital is actually the paper vote. Because everything before you vote, the voting list that you get for your electoral district, all that comes down online. When you vote, your local election district will physically can't count those paper ballots. Fine. Then they put it into the computer, and then it goes up to the higher level electoral district office, and then it goes higher up. All of that is done digitally. No one's carrying around all of those pieces of paper. If you want to manipulate a paper ballot election, all you have to do is just go into the system where they're sending the votes upstream. I mean, it's the act of using paper is really just only part of a long process involved in the election. I mean, one part of the process of an election that involves counting votes that can be manipulated all along the line. So, I mean, for us, it's the convenience, and of course, being a small country, we don't have consulates all over the world where your citizens abroad can go vote, but this increases the participation of Estonians living abroad. I mean, we have a significant portion of our population living in Finland. They vote online from Finland. And the other side of this, which also, I guess, is why we don't worry so much, is that the people who criticize it, well, they've never lost money with bank transactions, have they? Which are, I mean, that would be much more interesting to hack into. And virtually all bank transactions in this country are done using the identical system. Now, you're perfectly happy to use the transfer monies and to buy things using a system. Now, how is the system different from when you vote? I mean, it doesn't really add up.
As governments around the world are turning to algorithms and AI to automate their systems, what concerns do you have, especially in a 100% digital nation?
Well, I mean, I think somewhat fewer than for the use of large language models, which most people are thinking about, because the range of possibilities in government services are relatively limited. I mean, you sort of know what the people want to know, what they're going to ask. And that, I mean, I mentioned that just because we've seen these problems with hallucinations or, they cut wrong data. I mean, I even did this when ChatGPT came out. I just asked who I was, and it said I was the first female president elected in 2009, and I've been elected in 2006, and I was not female, obviously. The hallucinations you see with like 6 fingers or 4 fingers and pictures and so forth. I mean, those doubts are there about the reliability. But when it comes to government services, if you think about it, actually, it's kind of like, how do I get my dog license? I mean, it's kind of the number of possibilities that the computer, you can ask the computer. Or you can say, I have this problem, I want to get this kind of permit. I mean, these are not major brainwave operations that the computer can do for you. So you can ask the computer, I'd like to get this done in my relation with the Estonian government, and it will answer you. But we don't run into the hallucination problem.
I guess the problem comes in when, and I believe the Dutch government had a huge problem in 2013 when they were using AI to predict who is more likely to evade taxes, and it pretty much brought a meltdown to the system and upended millions of lives. Well,
I should say, first of all, that was 12 years ago, and IAEA was much more primitive. And secondly, there are kind of ethical issues you should not get into with AI, especially not the government. Any kind of predictions that might single out people other than say for health risks. I'd say that's an exception, but so who might be more of a criminal? I mean, all those things are ethically so unacceptable, and you have to have a strong sense of what is permissible using AI and what is not. And of course, you need a sound legal basis to do that. You can't just decide. The government can't just decide it. It needs to be allowed by law, and you would never get anything like that passed through our parliament.
So frameworks are important. So then in that case, building a robust e-government system did not happen overnight in Estonia. What would you say is the lessons that Taiwan can learn from Estonia so it doesn't have to go through growing pains?
I think the real big lesson is focus first on the kind of services that lots of people use that they don't like doing. It's taxes. I mean, okay, you've done that. That's good. But I mean, things that lots of people use that are in a paper world are inconvenient, and then but in a digital world you can make very convenient. So again, digital prescriptions. I mean, you don't need to go around with a piece of paper. It's in your computer. It says you have so many more refills left. I mean, all this stuff is. I mean, it's stuff it's the part of the paper world that or the world that requires paper records that simply makes your life inconvenient, and that is so easily solved by having it done where you can do it digitally. And what I would point out also, which has been a big thing for us, I mean, because we're proud of it, is that once you digitize government services, petty corruption becomes almost impossible. You can't bribe a computer. Now, there are two kinds of corruptions. There's petty corruption and grand corruption. Grand corruption is someone pays a huge amount of money to some minister to prefer one company or another. That's one kind of problem. Petty corruption is you have an official who, in order to get something you should be getting anyway, says, well, if you give me a little, basically it's understood, you have to pay him a little money and then you get your service. Traffic used to have a huge problem in the post-communist world. Traffic police, if you give them a little bribe, they don't give you a traffic ticket. None of that's possible. The petty corruption is basically ruled out in this society. You can only get a traffic ticket if you have an electronic record of your car, the time, the speed that is measured by radar, and anything else is if once you can do everything online, there's no official to pay that might say, well, if you do this or that, then so what we are. Not only are we by far the least corrupt former communist country, but we are one of the least corrupt countries in the European Union, where a lot of really the countries that used to lecture us about, corruption is a big problem. You have to really deal with it. I look at where they are today, I look at where we are, go, well, don't. The public perceptions have changed. Well, maybe they've not changed. You still run into people think, oh, it's a former communist country, they have corruption. But in fact, if you look at where we are on the Transparency International list, I guess we're number 10 in the world, least corrupt. But if you then take out the countries that are not in the EU, which is our reference point, basically, I guess we're number 6 or 7 out of the 27 countries of the European Union, which as it is far less corrupt than the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And finally, President Ilves, when can we expect you in Taiwan next? I believe the last time you were here, it was 2022?
I don't know. If I get an invitation, I mean, I don't sort of force myself on anyone, but if Taiwan's interested, I mean, I had an invitation somewhere, but I just couldn't make it to that because of some conflict. But yes, if people are interested, I'm happy to come. I've known your minister Andrew Tang for years and years. I don't know if he's still a minister. I just don't follow politics there, but basically we have. I guess the first time I came there, we got to know each other, and we run into each other in conferences, and I think he's brilliant. So keep doing what you're doing.
Hopefully we will see you here in person soon. Thank you so much, President Ilves. Great to get your insight, and hopefully we have so many takeaways from this conversation for Taiwan, which is on its way or on its path to digitization or digital transformation. Thank you very much. And to our viewers everywhere, it has been good to have your company. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to join the conversation and stay connected to tech and business stories from Taiwan, follow us on social media, where we keep you informed, engaged, and connected.